Hello there. Season 6 of Game of Thrones aired in April of 2016. At this point, the TV series has bypassed the books. This is the most expensive season of Game of Thrones so far, with Season 6 being produced on a budget of $100 million. Following Jon Snow's death, Davos Seaworth and Tom and Jon in Spain are trying to keep his body from being burnt by the Night's Watch. Daenerys Targaryen has been captured by a Dothraki horde, while Tyrion tries to manage Meereen in her absence. Jon Snow is resurrected by Melisandre, and he quits the Night's Watch, as Theon and Sansa escape Winterfell. Brienne of Tarth finds her and takes her to her brother Jon at Castle Black, while Theon returns to the Iron Islands. Arya Stark has to continue her training as a faceless man blinded until they cure her. Jeez, the books at least have her learn that she can see through the eyes of cats. Bran Stark returns this season training to be the Three-Eyed Raven. Cersei and Jaime are in King's Landing, and Cersei has a beast of a man working for her. In the books, after Ser Gregor dies, his skull is sent to Dawn, and a mysterious, silent, and similarly huge man named Robert Strong swears fealty to Cersei, but it's strongly implied to be Gregor Clegane. The TV series just makes it obvious that it's Gregor, and I honestly like Ser Gregor more as a silent, hulking beast than I ever did when he could talk. I find him so much more terrifying now. Everybody was so relieved to see Jon Snow back, and I don't think that there could have been a more effective way to conclude episode 2 than to have Ghost look up at his master's corpse, and then to have Jon wake up gasping for air. But we have to give him some additional credit for when Davos tries to get him off from the table. Kit Harington is really good in this scene. You really feel like he's been traumatized from his death. It's really cool to see Tyrion interact with Grey Worm and Missandei. Tyrion tries to light up the mood with these fairly serious characters. It's hilarious, but not a kind of hilarious that Game of Thrones often does. A scene that I really like with Tyrion is him unchaining Rhaegal and Viserion. Tyrion has some serious balls to walk into a dragon pit and unchain fire-breathing monsters. But there's also a rather touching scene where Tyrion tells them that when he was a child he wanted a dragon, just a small one for his name day. A lot of fans theorize that Tyrion may be a Targaryen, and while it is a theory that I find interesting, I hope that it's not true. What makes Tyrion work so well as a character is that he's a Lannister, who's despised by most of his Lannister family, and eventually fights against them. Making Tyrion a Targaryen would just make him less special. Part of Bran's training is seeing visions of the past. By the way, the Three-Eyed Raven is portrayed by the old guy from The Exorcist. Here's a picture of Leaf from Season 4, and here's a picture of Leaf from this season. Yeah, that's quite the make-up job, you know? It took 10 hours to turn the actors into the Children of the Forest. We find out through a vision that they created the White Walkers to defend themselves from man. But I guess that the experiment went horribly right. Bran also sees Winterfell during his father's youth. Game of Thrones never really did flashbacks before, but it's pretty cool. We see Ned Stark training Benjen, we see Lyanna riding a horse, something that his niece Arya would mimic, and that the young Hodor could talk, and that his name was Willis. The reason why Willis became Hodor will prove to be tragic. We see another flashback of an older Ned Stark just after Robert's rebellion when he tried to find his sister Lyanna, but the Three-Eyed Raven pulls him out. Bran goes back by himself and sees the army of the dead, and is spotted by the Night King, which marks him so that he can be found. Bran and Mira are forced to escape, but Summer and the Three-Eyed Raven are killed, and Hodor has to stay behind and is told to hold the door. Bran continues to experience visions while Mira tries to take him to safety. Among them we see a vision of the Mad King Aerys Targaryen and then his assassination by Jaime Lannister's sword. It's pretty awesome too, after hearing all about the Mad King for 6 seasons, to finally see this guy. And though he ultimately only gets 3 words to say, David Rintoul absolutely kills it.
Burn them all! Where's my sister?
Burn them all! After Daenerys was abducted by the Dothraki, she was taken to Vast Dothrak, where her captors would determine what to do with her. Whether she would spend the rest of her days with the other widowed Khaleesi's at Dosh Khalin, or if they'd take turns raping her. Yikes. This climaxes with one of Daenerys' most badass scenes. As the Dothraki say all of the vile things that they plan to do with her, she just stares at them with contempt. The words are failing to so much as penetrate her skin. And then they rightly so fear for their lives when she knocks over torches, quickly setting their hat on fire. Everyone outside watches in awe, and then Daenerys walks out of the fire, naked and unburned, and everyone kneels before her. Pure awesome. In Season 7, Sandor the Hound Clegane is back. Yay! This was regarded as one of the highlights of the episode, and I agree. I love the Hound. I even disagree that his return was diminished by the prior returning characters, because Sandor was fairly prominent and we were supposed to believe that he was dead. Arya decides to leave the Faceless Men, but the wife plans to kill her. This is probably the most danger that Arya has ever been in. Sure, she's been in situations where her life has been in danger before, but no one has ever tried to kill her specifically knowing who she is, and trying to kill people using magic before. It's incredibly suspenseful, and there's good reason to fear that she wouldn't survive. Luckily, she does. Episode 9 of this season, titled Battle of the Bastards, for it features the battle between the forces of Ramsay Bolton and Aegon Targaryen, Jon Snow, for Winterfell. This battle took 25 days to film, required 500 extras, 600 crew members, and 70 horses. And it's awesome. It starts with Ramsay sending out Rickon Stark, allowing him the chance to join up with his half-brother while also firing arrows at him. But an arrow gets Rickon before Jon does, and Jon is standing in the middle of the battlefield as Ramsay's forces charge. Jon, being the stupid brave man that he is, takes out Longclaw and stands ready to fight. And both forces meet just in time. For a while, there's a continuous cut following Jon Snow, with the sounds of swords clashing, men grunting, and flesh cutting. Everything's in focus, but also blurred a little bit. It makes everything look a bit dirtier. This is also accomplished by everyone getting covered in dirt, mud, and of course, blood. Every time somebody dies, their body doesn't disappear. It remains, and after a while, these corpses pile up to build walls. An effective scene is where Jon almost gets buried under these corpses and he's gasping for air. We feel trapped with him, and it's as hard for us to breathe as it is for poor Jon. Eventually, though, Jon's army is able to, with Peter Baelish's help, force back Ramsay into Winterfell. But Wun breaks open the fortress but succumbs to arrows, fired by Ramsay. Okay, he might have survived if he didn't take an arrow into his eye. Jon is visibly pissed, and as Ramsay tries shooting arrows at Jon, he uses a shield to get at Ramsay and beats him. Really beats him. Jon just pummels Ramsay into a bloody pulp, and for what he did to his home, what he's done to his sister, what he just did to Rickon, and for what he just did to the people he fought with, and for us, it's very satisfying. But that's not where it ends for Ramsay. Ramsay is tied to a chair in a dark place, with Sansa watching him through a set of bars, until he's devoured by his own dogs. After everything that this cruel man has done, torture, murder, rape, I don't think that there's a better person to watch this with than Sansa Stark. I feel like the reunion between Jon and Sansa wasn't as poignant as it could have been. Kit Harington and Sophie Turner both kind of make it work, but it could have worked better if we saw them previously interact. Go back and watch season 1, they don't share any scenes together. It's going to be much more heartwarming when Jon Snow and Arya Stark reunite. He gave her a sword. But could you imagine if it was Catelyn Stark and Jon Snow that reunited to take back Winterfell from Ramsay Bolton? That would have been interesting. While Jaime was gone on a mission, Cersei was summoned to the Sept of Baelor by the Faith Militant. Cersei, of course, tells them to fuck off, and they can't go through Ser Gregor. One tries to literally go through Ser Gregor, and he just rips his head off, and the rest of them leave. You know, I know that Cersei is not a hero, but it's just so satisfying to see religious fanatics be put into their place. But at the end of the season, Cersei blows up the Sept of Baelor, killing the High Sparrow, the Faith Militant, the heir to Highgarden, and King Tommen's wife. This leads to Tommen's suicide, and with Stannis and Renly Baratheon dead and Daenerys on another continent, Cersei is crowned as the first ruling queen of Westeros. But Jaime returns seeing a huge smoking crater in the middle of the city, and since he killed the Mad King to stop him from nuking the city, he's visibly not pleased that his sister and lover has actually committed it, though on a slightly smaller scale. But as a king is crowned, so is a king. Jon Snow is named the King in the North. This is incredibly effective, and it was all started by a 9-year-old girl, who, before Jiren became a thing, replaced Chuck Norris in those memes, and then, one by one, a different lord swears his sword to Jon, until the room is full of men holding up their swords and proclaiming a bastard, Jon Snow, as their King in the North, as an epic theme plays over this scene to sell it as an epic and important moment. But just before this scene, we had Bran Stark return to the vision of his father arriving at the Tower of Joy to find his sister. But it's too late. Lyanna is dying on a bed of her own blood. Ned tries to have the maidens help her, but Lyanna whispers something in his ear and asks a promise of Ned, or the subject will face death. Then we hear an infant's cries, and Ned's handed a baby. The camera zooms onto the baby's face, and we cut to Jon Snow. Jon Snow's biggest source of angst was growing up a bastard, not knowing who his mother was. Now we know his father wasn't Eddard Stark. His father was Rhaegar Targaryen, and his mother was Ned's sister, Lyanna Stark, confirming a years-long fan theory, at least in the TV series. It was a really strong cut. We see a baby born to be a prince, and then we cut to a man as he's crowned a king. Theon Greyjoy swears to serve his sister Yara Greyjoy, who it turns out is bisexual or pansexual according to Gemma Wellen. I thought she was a lesbian because I don't believe we ever see her kiss a man. Oh well, I've been wrong before. Anyway, they swear fealty to Daenerys Targaryen, who agrees if they stop raiding and pillaging, and so Daenerys finally sets sail for Westeros with her fleet, her army, and her dragons. Game of Thrones Season 6 was definitely the series' biggest season, and it's obvious that they were setting up the pieces for what would happen during its ending. Logically, a series as big as Game of Thrones would need time to set up its conclusion, and after Season 7, there's one more yet to come. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Vala Morgulis.